Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Gerard Pratt, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Squadron Leader Barry Walters. We warmly welcome the family of Private Ernest Millington Nixon, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome Defence chaplains from Australia and the Netherlands. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family, visitors, and students on behalf of the following schools. From Queensland, Tallulah State High School, Gladstone. And from Western Australia, Broome Senior High School. I invite you all now to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Students, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Ernest Millington Nixon. Popularly known as Ernie, Ernest Nixon was born on the 9th of May 1887 to David and Ada Nixon. The year he was born, his father took up land between Temora and Barmedman, land that he would farm for the rest of his life. Young Ernest attended the Reefton Public School and went on to work as a farmer on the family property, Hazelwood, near Reefton. Ernest Nixon tried to enlist in the Australian Imperial Force in August 1915, but was turned down as medical unfit because of an untreated hernia. He tried again in July 1916 and, probably having had the hernia treated, was then accepted as fit for active service. He underwent a period of training in Australia before leaving Sydney in October 1916 on board the troop ship Arcanthus with reinforcements for the 19th Battalion. Private Nixon spent the bitterly cold winter of 1916 and 1917 training on the Salisbury Plain before being sent to France to join the 19th Battalion on the Western Front in mid-March 1917. 6 weeks later, the battalion attacked German positions near the French village of Bullecourt. At 3:45 a.m. on the 3rd of May, the 19th Battalion, along with other Australian and British battalions, attacked and, meeting determined resistance, quickly faltered. The 19th Battalion suffered so many casualties amongst its officers and non-commissioned officers in the early stages of the attack that its headquarters was unable to obtain a clear idea of what had happened. More than 350 men of the 564 members of the 19th Battalion that took part in that attack were killed, wounded, or missing by the end of the day, many of them prisoners of war. One of those missing was Private Ernest Nixon. Efforts to trace him as a prisoner of war in Germany failed, and for a while nobody knew what had happened to him. Finally, in August, Private Donald Rial, who is in hospital in Birmingham, shed some light on the fate of Private Nixon. According to Rial, Nixon had been hit by the blast from a high explosive shell, which had been fatal. In December 1917, a court of inquiry determined that Private Ernest Millington Nixon had indeed been killed in action at the Second Battle of Bullecourt. After the war, the Graves Registration Unit worked to clear the battlefield of isolated graves, consolidating and building the million cemeteries that dot the fields of France and Belgium today. It seems that in the confusion following the battle, Private Nixon was buried, and in 1921 the Graves Registration Unit found the forgotten grave and was able to identify the body. Today, Ernest Nixon is buried in the Queant Road Cemetery, Bussy, under the words, "To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die." He died just days before his 30th birthday. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Ernest Millington Nixon, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres, or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you all for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.